Okay, imagine this, a civilization so incredibly advanced that it basically created the blueprint for, well, everything that came after. We're talking about the inventors of writing, the wheel, even the 60-second minute you use every single day. And yet, they vanished. So completely, in fact, but for thousands of years, nobody even knew they existed. So let's dive into the incredible story of the world's first cities and the mystery of how they fell.
Our story doesn't actually start in the ancient past. It starts in 1625. There's this Italian nobleman, Pietro della Valle, and he's wandering through the Iraqi desert. He comes across these enormous crumbling ruins and finds these baked mud bricks, and on them, a strange wedge-shaped writing that nobody, and I mean nobody in his time, had any clue how to read.
He didn't know it then, of course. How could he? But Pietro della Valle was standing in the ruins of Ur, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. It was the capital of the Sumerians, humanity's first great civilization, whose entire memory, their language, their very name, had been completely buried and forgotten by time.
And that is the central mystery, isn't it? How can a civilization that literally laid the foundations of our own world just vanish? What could possibly bring down the people who invented the city itself? Well, to figure that out, we first have to really understand what they built.
You see, the Sumerians weren't just early. They were foundational. The things they came up with weren't just little gadgets. They were the essential building blocks for pretty much everything that followed. They practically wrote the instruction manual for civilization.
So you got to picture this place, southern Iraq, a seriously harsh, hot desert. But you've got these two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, and they created this incredible oasis. They would flood and deposit this super fertile mud. The Sumerians called it rock flour, which is beautiful. And these people, they became absolute masters of irrigation, digging canals and turning this brutal landscape into a farming paradise. Now, think about what they had to work with. They had mud from the river and reeds growing on the banks. That's it. And with just those two things, they created what is arguably the single most transformative technology in all of human history: writing. They take a reed, shape the tip into a wedge, and press these cool symbols into wet clay tablets. It's called cuneiform, and it let them record everything from laws and trade deals to the world's very first epic poems.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you a number. 60. What on earth could 60 have to do with a civilization from 5,000 years ago? Well, turns out it has everything to do with how you measure your day right now.
Yep, that's them. The Sumerians used a base 60 number system. We mostly use a base 10 system, counting by tens. But their system was so good for dividing things up, especially for time and for geometry, that their legacy is still ticking away on every single clock in the world and in every 360-degree circle. It is a direct echo from their world to ours. And the list, it just keeps going. I mean, it's honestly staggering. The wheel, first for pottery, then for transport. The plow, which changed farming forever. The sailboat, the arch, and the dome in their buildings. They weren't just inventing things, they were inventing entire categories of technology that would shape how humans interact with the world from that point on.
All of this incredible innovation wasn't just happening in scattered villages. No, it was fueling the growth of something the world had never, ever seen before: the city. And these weren't just big towns, they were bustling, complex, monumental metropolises.
And just look at this timeline. This wasn't some brief flash in the pan. We're talking thousands of years of dominance, from the founding of what might be the world's very first city, Eridu, all the way to the height of the great empire of Ur over 3,000 years later. By 3500 BC, a city called Uruk was the biggest city on the entire planet, an unmatched center of power. You can just feel their pride, can't you? This quote comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the oldest piece of literature we have, period. They weren't just building shelters, they were creating massive monuments. It's like they were in awe of their own creations, these huge walls of baked brick rising out of the flat desert.
And life inside these walls was so vibrant. Just try to picture it. Markets overflowing with pomegranates and dates, winding alleys between mud brick houses. Oh, and they loved their beer. Get this, they had over 30 different kinds. And they weren't cut off from the world either. They were at the heart of a huge trade network, bringing in cedar from Lebanon, gold from Egypt, and beautiful blue stones all the way from modern-day Pakistan.
Okay, so that brings us back to our mystery. How does a world this powerful, this innovative, this connected just fall apart?
Well, the answer isn't one simple thing. It was a perfect storm, a horrible cascade of crises, where each one made the next one worse. Here's how it all went down. It was kind of like a three-punch combo. First, the climate turned on them. Then, the very land that made them rich became toxic. And finally, weakened from the inside, they were just overwhelmed from the outside. Let's break that down. The first blow was a climate catastrophe, a massive, centuries-long drought, which scientists now call the 4.2 kilo-year event, just gripped the entire region. The rivers they depended on started to shrink, the life-giving floods stopped coming. We're not talking about one bad harvest, we're talking about 300 years of drought.
The second blow was just a cruel, cruel irony, a totally unintended consequence of their own genius. For thousands of years, they've been irrigating their fields in this hot, dry climate, and slowly, salt from the river water built up in the soil, poisoning their own land. As you can see here, their fields, once overflowing, became toxic. Crop failures led to famine, trade dried up, and people started abandoning the great cities. The breadbasket of the ancient world was turning into a salt pan.
And that led to the final knockout punch. Weakened by climate change, weakened by their own ecological collapse, their mighty cities became a target. Desperate nomads, people the Sumerians called the Martu, saw an opportunity. They poured over the walls, and rival city-states, like the Elamites, delivered the final, fatal strike, sacking the capital in 2004 BC. And the human cost? It's just unimaginable. This quote is from a Sumerian poem called The Lament for It's not just a historical record. It's a gut-wrenching cry of despair. It captures the absolute horror of watching your entire world burn, of seeing a civilization that stood for millennia just collapse into smoke and ruin.
So, is that the end? Did they really disappear? Well, yes and no. Their amazing cities crumbled back into dust. Their language went silent. But their ideas? Their ideas became immortal. Let's look at the echoes they left behind.
Their legacy is just all around us. Their math literally governs our time. Their system of writing paved the way for every alphabet we use today. They wrote down the first laws. They created the very idea of a city. We are, in so many fundamental ways, still living in a world built on a Sumerian foundation. And this is the great paradox of Sumer. Physically, they were erased from history. But intellectually, culturally, their ideas were absorbed by everyone who came next. The Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and through them, the ideas spread to the rest of the world. Their influence is like a ghost in our modern machine.
Which really leaves us with this one final, really important question. Their story is a powerful warning, isn't it? It's about the very delicate balance between innovation, the environment, and ultimately survival. It kind of forces us to ask ourselves, are we paying enough attention to the long-term consequences of our own success?
There's this line from the Epic of Gilgamesh that just feels like the perfect way to end. It's this beautiful, ancient thought about how even the greatest, most brilliant things can be incredibly fleeting. The Sumerians looked upon the face of the sun. They built an entire world of wonders. And then, suddenly there was nothing. A pretty powerful reminder from the very dawn of history.